We need to come up with some words for this song. It's a very good song. Or
Not a good song.
It's an awful song, and we need to change it. One of those two things. Every day, it's like apple. I don't know what it's saying. Apple.
I think it says Upham, which if you've ever seen Saving Private Ryan, the little clerk that they grab last minute, and is not a combat guy. His name was Private Upham. That's what I hear every morning. Upham.
Interesting.
It's got an okay beat.
It's okay.
I mean, it's all right.
It's okay. Garrett produced it.
I did not.
He made it.
I wanted to play like real music, but apparently you can't unless you pay people for it.
Yeah. Can't pay.
It is a thing, isn't it?
Yeah, people do need to get paid. All right, real quick. VIP weekly hospitality tickets for the Black Desert Championship 2024 PGA Tour FedEx Cup are available now at blackdesertevents.com. The full field event is set to take place on the 19-hole championship Tom Weiskopf designed golf course at Black Desert from October 9th through October 13th. This marks a historic return of the PGA Tour to Utah after more than 6 decades. Even that. Every time we do that, it's so dramatic.
It is. It's better than Upham.
We have James Hadlock here, who is an incredible executive coach. Some might even say transformative.
Ooh, some, yeah.
Some may say that. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Clint?
Doing very well.
Great to see you again.
Great to see
Both you and Garrett.
Yeah. Love it, James. We've got a little bit of history. Pre-COVID, we had you on stage for Friday Conversation.
Yeah, that's right.
And up until that point, we'd mostly kind of had CEOs, and it was storytelling, and we started to have folks like you on with different stories, different perspectives. And we don't do a lot of pre-gaming. So as we were talking, a lot of it was new to me, right? Including some bad stuff. So I'd like you to tell your story of like how we ended up here and how you ended up in this profession, in this role, and what you currently do, because the backstory has some bad stuff and some good stuff.
Yeah, a lot of learning for sure. I grew up just an average kid in a little town in Idaho, and
sounds perfect,
right? And I mean, a little farm town, Rexburg, Idaho, to be exact, and
perfect.
Pretty average growing up. Had a lot of aspirations of becoming an entrepreneur and being successful. And in my early 20s, I had a chain of carpet cleaning companies in Idaho that I owned. So, I caught that entrepreneur bug, and then I ended up moving to Salt Lake. I wanted to expand my wings even more. And
the big city.
Right, exactly. And it felt like so big. I'm not kidding you. It felt so big. I mean, I didn't even get on an airplane until I was 18 years old. So...
Same.
It was a very kind of a sheltered life. And then when I got to Utah, I had this knack for marketing and ended up working with a group where we were featured on Good Morning America. We were doing all kinds of cool stuff in creating new products for the marketplace. I set up manufacturing in China. I mean, I was doing all kinds of things in my mid-20s that I just never thought would be possible, and became essentially successful in those endeavors. And then in my late 20s, I started to exhibit a lot of stress, a lot of overwhelm. I used to worry a lot about stuff, and so it was impacting my sleep. It was impacting my stomach. In and out of hospitals for different stomach issues because I could not stop worrying. I was such a worry wart. I mean, I worried about everything, and that was almost an obsession or something habitual that I started to exhibit. But I didn't let that get in the way of business. And so when I was in my early 30s, I was one of 3 owners of a company called Mind's Eye Group, and what we did was we provided exhibits and trade show booths. We would design like restaurants. If you're familiar with like a Rumby Island Grill, we designed all of that retail environment. And by the time I was 31, we had the 26th fastest growing company in Utah, and I had become a multi-millionaire. And behind the scenes, I was self-medicating because of all the stress and the worry and the overwhelm that I was exhibiting, and that started to spiral out of control. And so just imagine this, 31 years old, very successful, have this fast-growing company, and within just a couple of years, I found myself in and out of rehab centers. I found myself in and out of the psychiatric wards, and I found myself eventually losing that company and becoming homeless for a time. And holy cow, what a roller coaster that was for about another 7 years. And so by the time I was 38 years old, I found myself in a hotel. I was suicidal. I didn't know what I was going to do other than I just couldn't handle living anymore. And then something inside of me woke up. And I remember at 38 years old, with borrowing a friend's car, I ended up calling my mom, and I'm like, Mom, is there any way I can come and stay with you and Dad? So here I was, penniless, homeless, and asking my parents if I could come just stay at the house. And it was really interesting. Over about a 2-week period, I found myself getting really quiet on the inside. Now remember, I'd been to rehab a bunch. I'd been in the psych wards a bunch, tons of therapy, trying everything I could, being overly medicated to the point where I just lost all personality whatsoever. And here I was in my mom and dad's house with nothing, and I got really quiet on the inside, meaning I became very reflective, and I started to look at, how did I get here? Like, how did I really get here?
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting. Some of the reflection that I was doing was bringing up some answers. I had ignored a lot of trauma that I had when I was younger. I had ignored these feelings of overwhelm and stress forever. And it brought me to a place where, all I wanted to do was feel better. And what I didn't understand is that you can't fix a feeling. You can't fix a feeling. And yet I was trying to through self-medication. And oftentimes we go through life trying to fix our feelings or change our state of being by doing distraction, right? Whatever that distraction may be, whether it's work. I would tell people I was a workaholic way before I was an alcoholic. And so as I got quiet on the inside and I started to look at what was driving this behavior, because, when I was in my early 20s, I was a really just good person. I would be the guy who would pull over when I saw people that had a tire, a flat tire. I would be the person that would go out of my way to serve others. And then yet here I was on the other side of that where, I remember being down in Texas at one of my friend's house. His wife had just had a baby, and I was going through their medicine cabinet trying to find something to self-medicate with. And it just blew my mind that I went from thinking I was, this really great person to all of a sudden being someone who'd lie, cheat, and steal. But what I didn't realize is that I was using other distractions, including volunteerism, to try to get out of these feelings that I was having on a constant basis. And, as I went through that process at my mom and dad's house for a couple of weeks, I had this huge aha moment where all of a sudden I knew the reason that I was showing up the way I was most of my life was I inherently felt unlovable. I didn't feel like I was worthy of love. And so when you don't feel like you're worthy of love, what do you try to do? Well, you try to get people to like you. And so I became that guy for a while. Or you try to impress people with accolades and success. And the world will go ahead and reinforce that with pats on the back. But when that didn't work for me, when I was at the pinnacle of my success financially, and all of a sudden I still wasn't feeling happy or feeling any kind of peace, that's when I went that other direction with drug and alcohol.
Wow. So the only good thing about being at rock bottom is there's only one way up.
Yeah, and I would say, I had many what felt like rock bottoms, but it can always get worse.
Yeah.
But at that point, when I'm sitting in my mom and dad's home, starting to get quiet on the inside, I had to explore on a very deep level internally, why did I think I was unlovable? Or what was behind that? And, it came from a lot of belief systems. It came from the way that I interpreted the way I was raised. It came from the different messages I was getting from the world because I had been abused.
Mm-hmm.
And so I inherently had this, I mean, imagine looking through a lens that no matter what you do, no matter what you say, that you're unlovable. How would you show up in the world? And so as I explored that more and I got more quiet with that, I started to have some insights. And then I had this very subtle but profound realization and insight. And it was that I, for the first time, got to see myself through the eyes of my parents, is the best way I can describe it. Like, I was inherently lovable. And what was interesting about that is when I had that just quick little insight, no longer were drugs and alcohol attractive to me at all. Because if I don't have to fix a feeling that no longer exists, then why would I ever go back to using those substances to try to self-medicate? And it was like I had been in a dark room with towels covering all the lights, and all of a sudden those towels were lifted, and all of a sudden, I mean, so I lit up, and I was so fascinated because now all of a sudden I wasn't so, I didn't feel like I was navigating in the dark anymore.
Interesting. Kudos to you for making it through. So then, I don't know, roughly 16 years ago, was that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You've since built a framework, and when we were talking previously, it was Blue Novus. Now it's jameshadlock.com,
Mm-hmm.
where you're using what you went through and what you've ultimately learned, right? Because you've learned a lot since, to help other people. I guess summarize the last 16 years, currently what you're doing. You're working with a lot of executives, right? But the bad stuff that helped you learn and how you're applying it to help other people, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, well, when I had this transformative experience myself at my mom and dad's, one of the things that really intrigued me was I wanted to better understand that, because I had been told my whole life that I would struggle and suffer for the rest of my life. And I just didn't have that experience. And so I wanted to understand, what is the human transformation process? What is required to go through big changes like that, especially when you've been emotionally stretched the way that I had. And so I became a student of my own experience. And I did that. I looked at everything from Eastern philosophies to neuroscience to psychology. And so for the last 16 years, I've dedicated my life to wanting to better understand that process. And so that's where it started. It started me as just a student of my own experience, and a lot of self-learning, a lot of hit and miss when I would, talk with others, or if somebody wanted maybe some support. But where it eventually took me was I first started out as consulting in the behavioral health industry, so with addiction recovery centers. And one of the things that was really interesting about those experiences is I got to talk with a lot of people who struggled. And it was consistent that almost everybody that I talked to in the addiction recovery world felt unlovable on some level. And I understand. I think if you're human, most of us are going to go through bouts of maybe insecurities or whatever the case may be. But consistently, I found that people felt this, and a lot of it was because of experiences they had, belief systems they had created. And I found that fascinating that I wasn't the only one,
Mm-hmm.
And if you talk with people who were in that, I think we lack a deeper understanding of what really drives people to want to self-medicate. Well, as I was in the behavioral health industry, one of the things that I also saw that was really interesting is that we address mental health in this country from a crisis perspective, almost exclusively. You think about how much time we spend on our physical health or spend at work. How much time are we spending on our inner world, like on our own emotional health? Do we even invest in it at all, or do we just wait until the wheels come off and then decide, well, I better address something now? And so one of the things that I was really intrigued about was, why aren't we investing more in our own personal mental health on a regular basis? The way we literally address it would be like addressing our finances only when we need to file for bankruptcy. That's how we address mental health.
Mm.
And I just find that really fascinating with all the investment we put into our, heart health and physical health, et cetera. And yet we wait until the wheels come off. So, if I'm healthy, then everything's good. But what if I were to just spend a little bit of time on introspection or really navigating and wanting to understand better how my mind works and what I call the thought-feeling relationship. And so as I got deeper into the behavioral health field, one of the things that, because of my background in working in business and having had successful companies, is I'm like, I wonder if we could take this conversation about being proactive about mental health into the workplace. And this was pre-COVID. So in 2017, my wife and we started a company called Blue Novus with the sole idea of we wanted to open up a bigger conversation in the workplace. And pre-COVID, not a whole lot of people wanted to have that conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And that's why when I came to your group pre-COVID, I thought it was just such I remember we filled the room, first of all.
Yep.
We had a very successful panel of people opening up the conversation around mental health, but companies were still very apprehensive. And we learned a lot. So with Blue Novus, we ended up working with a lot of well-known companies, Purple Mattress, Backcountry, Utah Jazz, to name just a few. And what we found out is that the employees needed and wanted more of a concierge service to support their mental health. And there just wasn't anything out there like what we had created. And so we were to mental health in the workplace like Uber was to taxis. We started to change the narrative in a lot of ways and be more proactive by providing information before the crisis happened. Certainly still addressed crisis, but I thought it was important that we started to have more conversations. So one of the things that we did different than anyone else on the planet at the time was we would go in and we'd train managers on how to address mental health in the workplace, like not look for just signs and symptoms, which is typically what we do, but how do you even open a conversation about mental health in the workplace within your own organization, just to open it up so people feel more safe. Some of the stats are really interesting. Mental Health of America, which is a foundation that works with companies, even like I believe Qualtrics has been a part of some of the things that they've done, but they listed the most prevalence of mental illness in the entire United States is right here in Utah. We rank number 1 in mental illness. That's about 1 in 4 people. So 25% of all the workers in your business today are living with some sort of mental illness. And I would say, though, that 100% struggle from time to time. I mean, we all go through things, whether it's the loss of a loved one or maybe we find out, an illness with one of our kids, and all of a sudden we have that stress that comes on. And so we had a really simple, idea, and that was let's see if we can open this conversation in the workplace and make it okay. Because here's the other stat that I find really interesting is that 55 to 80%, depending on what data you look at, of people who live with mental illness will never reach out and get the help that they need. Stigma and job concern are the 2 biggest reasons. And so why not have a bigger conversation in the workplace around mental health? But not just from, let's look for signs and symptoms when someone's in trouble. What if we invested in it like we invest in our physical health, like on a daily basis or sending out? And so anyway, I'm so passionate about this. Obviously, the landscape has changed a lot. A lot of people are now in this conversation, which I think is amazing. But that was the start of my journey in being able to take what I had struggled with and turn it into something that hopefully was useful to a lot of organizations and a lot of individuals.
And what have you learned so far as it relates to the business community, opening up those conversations? What kind of effect has that had?
Just having the conversation alone gives people permission to reach out and get help. So the impact that it's had, just to give you an idea, with companies that were comparable to Blue Novus, there was about 3% of that organization, of an organization would reach out and get help. That was about the average. We were hitting numbers like 25 to 30% of people were reaching out for help. So addressing the stigma by having open, honest conversations, leaders being vulnerable, has a massive impact. In fact, Qualtrics will tell you with the data that they've shown and that I've seen is that managers are the key to addressing mental health in the workplace. So it's had a massive impact in just that awareness piece. I still think we can do better, especially with being more proactive. And there's ways that we can do that, I think, in a very simple way. I mean, I was just at Young Automotive, which is, one of the bigger automotive companies here in the state. I think they have like 30 dealerships. And they had me come in and do a work-life balance training with them, with all of their employees at their central office. And it was unbelievable how many people were willing to be vulnerable in a theater room of over 200 people, and people were being so open and honest about their own experience. And the reports I heard after that meeting or after that training were how many of the managers had some of their employees come to them and say, "Hey, I need help. I want to address this on a more healthy way."
So what happens then at that point? So with that example, you're in front of a lot of people instead of, one-on-one, so you can scale that. They go to their manager. I assume there has to be, systems or processes or protocols in place. But what happens when they say, "I got this, this, and this"?
Well, what hopefully is happening is that the managers understand and take it seriously, number one. And then the other thing is most companies are going to have a mental health solution tied to their health insurance. Blue Novus was one of those services, but there's something called an EAP, an employee assistance program, that typically most companies have. And so the idea would be is that manager gets them to call that number, and then they can get the help that they need, whether that's professional help, therapy, whatever it may be that they need.
But at that point, they won't interact with you anymore? Like, you have key channel partners for that type of stuff?
Yeah. Well, so my model's changed, just to kind of give you an update. So my wife and I, our business partner, acquired our interest in Blue Novus about a year ago. And one of the reasons is because I was really finding more, maybe I can call it a calling, but I just felt so drawn to doing more coaching specifically with executives, because one of the biggest differences I found is no matter what we did as a mental health provider for organizations, if you didn't have buy-in from your executive team, you weren't going to get that stigma. I mean, there were still concerns with how that was seen in an organization. And so I really felt like I could have a bigger impact. And frankly, I think that coaching is my calling. And so we agreed to that. Blue Novus was taken over. They've since changed the name and are doing some other things in law enforcement, et cetera, which is another area that really needs it. And I have been now coaching. I've been coaching off and on for about a decade. But I really took it seriously about 3 years ago when I started to see that, man, if I could influence just even the top executives of organizations, that would trickle down and have as much of an impact as me trying to talk with employees themselves. And so my model is I go in and I work with organizations at the executive level. And then if they need my consulting services for workplace wellness, then I'll do like what I did at Young Automotive, who's, not only do I work with them on a consulting level with their HR department, I work with all of their C-suite, and I work with them on one-to-one basis. And what I do with them is I help them get quiet on the inside. I help them understand and reduce stress. Yeah, I mean, think of how lost we get in the clutter of our own minds on a daily basis. How busy-headed are we? Which then converts into stress and overwhelm and worry, and then it's really easy to make that association that impacts performance. I mean, you think of somebody who is really stressed out, and they might even argue that that stress is what drives them to perform, but put it in a context of sports. If an athlete is really stressed, how's their performance going to be versus someone who is in the zone or in the flow? And so I help executives get in the flow of life, understand how their mind works and how to quiet down on the inside in such a way that they can perform at a level that they never even thought possible.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of clatter in between the ears.
Yeah,
And-
tell me about your experience with that, Garrett. I mean, if you would,
Oh,
and the only
boy.
reason,
Strap in.
well, and the
We
reason
got
I,
time.
the reason I say that is because I think the more that we can be vulnerable, that I mean, here's the thing: we all see each other on the outside, but what's really going on the inside of an individual at any given time?
Yeah. I'm a pretty open book. Clint can attest, and others, because we're a small team and we've been through a lot together over the years. And I found that mitigates a lot of things because it gets rid of the clatter in between the ears. But it is interesting with you having been an entrepreneur, having been successful, and then homeless. You can relate to folks in the entrepreneurial space a lot better than, some psychiatrist that has never needed to run payroll or meet payroll or things like that, because they might not relate to like, well, you're just running a business, can't be that hard. But there are a lot of things that go into, like, you're in charge of people's lives and livelihoods and things like that. So it is that different type of stress. And when I have friends that are like, ugh, and you can see like they're grinding and they're sanding the gears, having an outlet like you or, some other service would be wildly beneficial. Not that long ago, it'd be like, I can't tell anyone that I don't want to work 80 hours a week. Because the reality is you could probably be fine working that 40 or 50 and accomplish everything else without all the smoke and mirrors. But luckily I have like really good friends that I guess it's just our personalities just to be really open, not hide much. And you'll get the good feedback and the unsolicited even. I have some really good friends that are intuitive and they have a good sense for it. They'll bring stuff up that is even a year or two old and say, what happened there?
Mm-hmm.
Are you still feeling like that? So it's free and it's worked really well, at least for me, to keep the clatter out. Because if you don't, to your point, keep tabs on it, it will compound.
Well, and I guess it's huge to have connection, right? And so one of the things that I talk about with organizations is be proactive about connecting with the people around you and build a team, if you will, of just people that you can chat with.
Yeah.
It's literally one of the things that that got me through, was to start having more deeper connections and to be vulnerable in those connections. Like one of the things, and I will say here in Utah and where I grew up in Idaho, is I think we're suffering from what I call I'm fine-itis.
Mm-hmm.
How you doing? I'm fine.
Yeah.
And then behind the scenes, they're struggling. And here's the thing. There's still times, even though that I've dedicated my life to this work, I still have those days where I feel insecure. I still have those days where I feel a little bit more stressed than others. But because I know how to navigate that now, it just doesn't last like it used to.
Yeah.
It's not chronic.
Yeah.
But the idea of I'm fine-itis to me is we tend to compare ourselves here in Utah a lot. Gosh, I don't remember. This was a couple of years ago, and I was meeting with an executive, and they were saying one of their friends was getting ready to sell their company for $86 million, and they were bummed out about it because so and so just sold their company for $1 billion.
Yeah.
You guys know. I think you both know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right. And so to be vulnerable enough to be real, and to your point, Garrett, of having some friends that you can trust, because it requires a trust, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. One, to maybe keep their mouth shut, and then two, to listen instead of immediately jump in and offer, oh, I listened to this podcast. I'm like, oh, great. I don't really care about that. I'm here to talk with you, because you can do that in a business setting, right? Of this sucks. Also, there's some things on the outside that are making it difficult. Whether it's mentorship or executive coaching, you are going to get some kind of old-fashioned therapy through that, I've found. Even if you're asking for advice on I need to scale the company to this, or I need to do this. The intuitive ones will ask, what's going on the outside, right? Do you have enough fuel in the tank? Everything good on the family front or whatever front? Because it's tough to have half the house on fire and keep the other house running in order.
Yeah, it really is. And that's why one of the things that I get told all the time when I am working with either individuals or with groups is this idea of vulnerability, to really show yourself, because it's a cue. Like if I'm being super real, what does that give you permission to be?
Super real?
Yeah, good guess.
Yeah.
But it's true. And yet, the kind of the old guard of leadership is that we need to show up a certain way and not show any cracks in the armor, and be okay with everything. And that's just not real life.
No.
I mean, I here in Utah, we've seen a lot of people that have chosen, some different paths on how to really be in the workplace. And if I could tell leaders anything, it would be to be real, be honest, be vulnerable, be open, because you'll immediately give them permission to do the same.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it benefits both parties too, weirdly enough. The one kind of needing the help and guidance, and the one helping.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's an exchange. One of the little experiments I'll do with people when I'm presenting oftentimes is I'll have everybody get their phone out and send a text to someone that they appreciate, and just genuinely send that appreciation to them. And it's amazing how emotional the room gets on just some simple task like that. And so one of the other ways that, that I speak to this is connect in a vulnerable way with other people. And it does go both ways. Because I mean, how good does it feel when you send out a text about appreciation to somebody? How good does that feel to me? Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
How does it feel on the other end when you receive that from somebody?
Probably equally as good.
And I mean, these are just little tips on how to maintain better mental health and emotional well-being, but they make a huge difference. They make a huge difference. You said earlier something about keeping your mouth shut and just listening. It's one of the other things that I train leaders on, is how to become better communicators through listening skills. Because just because somebody's talking to you doesn't mean that you have to have all the answers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You don't have to give advice every single time. What if you were to just listen?
Yeah. Because you probably don't have all the answers. And even if you do, it might not be the right time.
Yeah. I mean, one of the greatest skills that I implement even with my coaching is, you'd be surprised on how few answers I actually give. It's mostly about listening and then turning them inward to look for themselves inside, which is exactly what happened to me. And so to facilitate that kind of a space where reflection comes in, the fact is most people already have all the answers they need inside of them.
Mm-hmm.
We're built innately with some inner wisdom that we can access. And so what if you just got quiet enough to listen to that rather than to all the chatter out there?
Yeah.
And all the chatter between your own ears.
Yeah. Yeah. Mr. Clint Betts is actually pretty good at that. He'll listen.
I am?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Because in my group of friends, I'll bitch and moan and complain and share thoughts and opinions and worries. And he's actually like a really good listener.
Mm.
And usually it'll just be either that or a small reply, but not a lot of, well, here's what I think, or here's this podcast I listened to, or oh, you can try this. Because I don't think a lot of times when people are talking about mental health as it pertains to them, they're wanting the solution based on the person's podcast history, right? Like that's come up a lot recently, which is good. Which leads to this question. We do have a little bit of data on our timelines here. Mental health has been a lot more popular and destigmatized since we last chatted. Ultimately, good or bad for folks in general from a macro level, and then for you and your business, good or bad?
Yeah, I think anytime we can open up a conversation around mental health, it's good. I would like to even move that conversation more upstream, because talking about it is one part, but actually being able to understand it is a whole different level of challenges that we face right now, because a lot of people want to jump in and be helpful around mental health, but I still don't know how proactive we're being. You know, I still think the conversation, like if you go to, you know, some of the different organizations out there, they have a mental health first aid training, which I think is amazing. The focus though is on crisis. The focus is on look for these signs with your employees. And what I'm suggesting is move that conversation upstream. Let's talk about it right now today and not wait for that employee. And so, you know, if I could share anything with leaders is start having conversations around how you navigate mental health yourself. Like, what does your emotional health fitness program look like, if you will?
Mm-hmm.
You know, are there things that you're doing? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you going, you know, finding ways to unwind? Are you being more thoughtful around your own emotional states and being able to see those? And are you willing to share those? I mean, one of the most powerful things you could do as a leader or a manager is if you're in, I mean, how often are we having meetings with our teams? Probably on a weekly basis. What if you just spent 10% of that time in talking about how you navigated your stress last week? Just that alone.
Yeah.
Simple. But what do you think that does? What message do you send?
That you can be vulnerable, you can be open, and it's still a human-centric business. Like, there's a lot of upsides there, right?
There is, and guess what? That doesn't cost you anything.
No.
That's the other thing, is these are simple ways to move that conversation even further upward. I mean, because I work with a lot of executives, and you know, there's often trends. I mean, a couple of years ago it was cycling, and right now it's ice baths.
Yep.
Right? Everybody's got one. Well, what if you were to take the same amount of time that you do that and just spend it on your inner health?
Yeah. It's probably better than waiting till the end when it's in a crisis.
Well, it certainly is. But it's no different than if, you know, I get the wake up call if I'm not taking care of my health, and all of a sudden I have a heart attack, and then that wakes me up to wanting to do better. We can continue that route. Or you can spend a little bit of time on taking care of your physical health too. So to me, it's about investing in the whole person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the least amount I've talked on a podcast. You're fascinating. I've loved listening to you here. How do people get in touch? How do they work with you?
Yeah, a couple of easy ways. I mean, really just, you can either email me directly at james@jameshadlock.com or go to my website, jameshadlock.com. And there are several ways that you can contact me there, and all my information is on there. That would be the easiest.
You also have a podcast? Am I right?
I don't have a podcast yet.
I thought I saw one on your website here.
Well, I've been on a bunch, and
I
so
see.
those are where I was a guest on.
Come do a podcast with us.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That would we ought to, right?
Seriously.
Okay.
We're
Very
setting
needed.
something up for that.
Are you really?
Yep.
Well, I would love to be a part of something like that. I mean, it literally is my next edition is to get something going, just to have these conversations. Cause you know, it's amazing. I know that my model in working with individuals about helping them get quiet on the inside sounds a little bit benign, but let me tell you, it impacts everything, their relationships, their performance, the way that they experience stress. You know, I was just with an executive the other day, and he's like, holy cow. He goes, I cannot believe that I used to operate under chronic stress the way I did for years and years and years. And now he's starting to get more quiet in his mind, not as much clatter.
Mm-hmm.
And it frees him up. He's like, I'm more present at home. I'm able to play with my kids more. Like, the implications of getting quiet on the inside, but we're so habitual at our thinking habits and so habitual at just trying to maintain. And we don't even realize the impact that stress and overwhelm have on us.
Yeah.
on a regular basis. So I would love to explore that with you. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Good deal. Let's do it.
All right. I got 2 more things real
Yeah.
quick. I'm going to make a transition into someone is going to feel a lot of stress this weekend. This is a great weekend for auto racing. You've got the Monaco Grand Prix, all the Euro trash, and one American will be racing in Monte Carlo. It's not a great race, but the qualifying's amazing. Hopefully somebody other than Max Verstappen. Then you got the Indy 500 and the Coca-Cola 600, but there's a fella named Kyle Larson. He's a NASCAR champion. He's going to do the Indy 500. He's already qualified for 5th, and he's going to hop on a plane and fly to Charlotte and do the Coca-Cola 600, which is about 1,100 miles.
That's incredible.
Unbelievable. Wow.
There's been a few that have tried it. The last one that did it semi-successfully was Tony Stewart. Again, he was a 3-time champion, but raced Indy, got out, ran to the plane, probably a helicopter to the plane, Charlotte, same thing, got in the car. And by like the final 10, 11 laps, as the story goes, there was a hot dog wrapper that was flying across the track. And he's like, it looked like a pink elephant to me. Like he was feeling it.
Wow.
Feeling it. So anyways, a lot of fun. Indy cars go 230 miles an hour, right? So it's very cool.
I actually think I was at that Indy 500 that Tony Stewart was in back in the early 2000s.
2001,
right?
I think, is that when he did that.
I believe the one and only time that I ended up going.
Cool.
Yeah.
You got to be really, really good at racing cars to do both in one day.
Wow.
The other thing is we had candidate Stuart Pay on the show 2 days ago, and we talked about having a debate. We are going to have that debate June 4th, noon. We've got Stuart Pay in, John Dougal in, Case Lawrence in. It'll be...
Who else do we need in?
Mike Kennedy and J.R. Bird.
Mike Kennedy. Mike, JR.
I texted you yesterday.
Come on.
You got our number. But with 3/5, we're going to do it. It'll be at Bad Bet Productions in Sandy. We'll market and promote it. But that's how quick we move when it comes to politics. And I believe you'll moderate it.
I will. Yeah, Mike and JR come to the debate.
Get in the fray. It'll be fun.
It'll be fun. It'll be great. Well, all right. That's the last show of the week for us. Look forward to a podcast with you.
Yes.
We're going to create a podcast for you. Yeah.
Let's do it.
I see that as a really good thing.
Yeah.
Memorial Day on Monday, and then Jordan Avner, owner of Establish and Varden Golf and Corporate Movement. But I'll be wearing a golf glove on Tuesday because that's his company.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know Jordan very well, actually. Jordan was involved in Stardust LC way back in the day.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you Tuesday.